Breaking news, everyone. Just George and Max here for this one. We are about to break down the Spider-Man No Way Home second trailer that just dropped earlier this evening. Um, Definitely showed us more than the first trailer.
Yeah, I mean that Hello Peter, we saw it again, but it um there was a little bit more context, and I think it definitely answered a question that I know a lot of fans had. I know I had of just how did Doc Ock know the name of Spider-Man, like our Spider-Man, Tom Holland.
Yeah, the whole I think it was good that we got more of the context for that bridge fight that we saw just a snippet of in the first trailer back in August. Just to see, the pumpkin bomb when Strange says the line, visitors from all the universe or from every universe.
Yeah.
Um, and then to see the pumpkin bomb go off and then actually explosions right after that. Hello, Peter. And then they fight. Tom Holland's Peter Parker gets away and then he gets pinned. And then Otto Octavius, Alfred Molina, says, "You're not Peter Parker."
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about how some questions were answered, but to be honest, I think it raised more questions than it actually helped. And
Yeah.
George and I were talking a little bit beforehand how the trailer was a little bit disjointed, and I have to agree that there wasn't, I mean, trailers are sometimes like that, but there wasn't a great narrative structure. And George said that what was it that they're trying to throw us off, something like that?
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed a lot more with trailers recently, you saw it a little bit with the theatrical trailer of Eternals. I remember it was a big deal about Star Wars: The Last Jedi 4 years ago. Um, Trailers that will throw off the audience in advance of a screening. And Infinity War showed the Hulk at the Battle of
Mm,
Wakanda.
yep.
He wasn't there in the movie. He was there in the trailer, wasn't
Mhm.
there in the movie. So there are moments, a lot of lines, particularly spoken by Doctor Strange in this trailer, were like split between voiceover and on-screen dialogue. And I
Yep.
think one thing that a lot of modern movie trailers do is push together lines to make
Mhm.
them sound a certain way, by doing that sort of strategy and going from, this is the line on the voiceover, this is the line on the on-screen dialogue, and then it's going to be something that has a different meaning than we're going for in the actual film. Um, and then in terms of video editing, visually, inserting or removing things like the Hulk in the trailer for Infinity War. There's that big shot right towards the end of Peter Parker going up against Sandman, Electro, and the Lizard. And this is
Mhm.
where we were talking before. This is where we kind of disagreed a little bit. And I think I am of the theory, and I saw this one online. This isn't an original theory, but I am of the idea that there are two other Spider-Men in that shot in the film. I think Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are going to be in that moment, 3-on-3.
I think that'd be pretty great. My theory that I was throwing out was just that this is a packed movie already with Doctor Strange,
Yeah.
Spider-Man, five villains confirmed, maybe a sixth on the way that we don't know about. Um,
Could we get a multiversal Mysterio? We
Potentially
saw the
Venom,
the post-credit scene from Let There Be Carnage. Yep.
yeah, I mean, there's so many different possibilities to fill that sixth spot in what could be the Sinister Six, if that's the direction that Marvel has decided to take this movie.
Which it's a
Um,
long time coming. They set it up at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Long time coming, but also it hasn't worked before. Like that was the problem with that a lot of people had with Spider-Man 3 from Sam Raimi, and what people had an issue with in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Andrew Garfield's version of Spider-Man. And Going back to George's earlier point about what trailers are made of now for modern movies, and the next 15 seconds are a slight spoiler for Eternals. So if you haven't seen it, skip over. But the trailer for Eternals seemed to showcase a lot of footage from the very beginning of the film, the first 20 or 30 minutes. And that's something that I always like to notice is what do I remember seeing in a trailer? And where does it get placed in the movie? And there was a lot that was right up
That
there. And
first
then,
battle in Mesopotamia, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I wonder what that's going to be like when I'm sitting in the theaters on December 17th, um, trying to track what I saw in these two trailers.
Yeah, I think one thing that I noticed, and Eternals is a good comp for this, is that a lot of the content in because we had two trailers for Eternals, two
Yeah.
trailers released online in the same way that these trailers have been released online for No Way Home, and the content of the Eternals trailers very similar. There was a lot of overlap in the content, just because we don't know these characters, so we're going to get a lot of the same stuff to emphasize the introduction element of the story. No Way Home, we know Tom Holland's Peter Parker. He's been in 5 MCU films, right? Civil War, Homecoming, Infinity War, Endgame, Far From Home. He's been in 5 MCU films. We know Doctor Strange. He's been in 3 of them. We know the various rogues from the Raimi verse and the Mark Webb verse, uh, because Webb verse could just be Spider Verse. And so, other than Hello Peter, there was no overlap between the first
I
trailer
mean,
in August and this one. So
there
we're
were a couple
seeing,
of just extended scenes, I think, with Doctor Strange flipping the subway cars over. We got that early in
yeah,
the teaser.
but
We
still,
obviously got a little bit more with the spell and the sanctum, and just a little bit more dialogue there, but there wasn't a lot that was added to those scenes, right? It's nothing that was new and unexpected where we were like, oh my God, this is
but
a new
then
revelation.
you get these extended views of
Mhm.
Sandman, Electro, Lizard,
Yeah.
Green Goblin, who, you know, 2 different looks at Green Goblin in looked like 2 different costumes.
Yep.
So we could be seeing a second Goblin in this film, and maybe that's your 6th villain.
Yep.
Um, but
I
definitely,
would hazard a guess that it would be Dane DeHaan over Hobgoblin, which of course would be Ned, and that would be interesting unless we see a multiverse Ned, and that's a little bit strange. That would be really interesting and kind of fascinating for this Peter to go up against.
well, Jacob Batalon did lose over 100 pounds for his performance in this film.
Yeah,
So maybe we could see Ned get a little bit more physical in this film. You see him wearing the varsity jacket, so maybe
it's true.
he's
It
wearing
it did
he's
seem a
going a
little
little
bit
more
more
athletic.
Dane DeHaan type, or even James
Yeah,
Franco type, but I have my very sincere doubts that James Franco will
I
show
don't
up
think
in this movie.
I don't
There's
think they'd bring
almost
James
no
Franco back.
chance. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, but you know, there's almost between the 2 trailers that we've seen now, there's almost, and I don't know the runtime. I don't know if it's been announced yet for this film, but we've gotten 5 minutes of content out of it.
yeah.
How much of that
Of probably a
is
2.5 hour movie.
right. I think Homecoming was about 210 and Far From Home was about 215. So it's probably going to be something around
Yeah.
there. Maybe a little bit longer. The first 2 films in the Raimi verse were around 2 hours, and then Spider-Man 3 was longer.
I feel like I
Uh,
saw something about this though, where this was one of the, or maybe that was about Eternals, but
well,
I know
Eternals was
that
237.
it's 237. Yeah. But it just feels like with the amount, if the amount of stuff that they have to fit into this movie and things that we don't even know about, and potentially two more Spider-Man, it's gonna be a big movie, and um, they'll need the space to unpack the story if they're going to do it right and not fall into the trap of um, uh, the third movie in the trilogy or the last movie in the series not living up to the expectations of fans.
Yeah, definitely going to be very crowded with all of the villains we've seen, with all of the
Yeah.
heroes we've seen, just with Peter Parker and Stephen Strange. Which, Strange is going to be filling that role that Fury had in Far From Home, that Tony Stark had in Homecoming.
But could
Um,
Strange fill that role of kind of that sixth villain type? Because there's some very serious conflict going on between he and Tom Holland within this trailer and even the first one, the teaser. They obviously have disagreements. This one felt a little bit more antagonistic than before,
I
where
don't
it
know if
was
they would go the villain route for
maybe not
Strange
maybe not villain, but at
as
least
an
like
adversary,
a yeah. Not I don't think he's gonna I don't think he's gonna be a like an evil Doctor Strange, but there's certainly some sort of conflict and adversarial um, tension between the two of them, and maybe that's what they do as sort of like the sixth um, person in the Sinister Six, but that
it's an
might not,
interesting theory.
so that it doesn't quite fit, but is a way for them to go without um, fully leaning into the Sinister Six, the morally gray six.
Yeah, and especially in that moral gray area is the possibility of the introduction of Tom Hardy's Venom, because he's been this anti-hero. He's been basically, I hate doing this, but a good guy in his two films in the Sonyverse, Sony universe of Marvel characters. So he he saw the post-credit scene of Let There Be Carnage. He jumped into the MCU. You got J. Jonah Jameson, you got Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Venom's in the MCU. That's
Yep.
non-debatable at this point. Whether he shows up in this film or in Tom Holland's fourth go as Spider-Man, I think it would be weird to introduce him 2 months before No Way Home and not to include him. But again, Sony and
At
Marvel
least in
have
one of the
this.
upcoming multiverse films. If
Yeah,
it's not in this one, then Multiverse of Madness. But I mean, it would make a lot of sense to see him in this.
given that he
You
is
know,
one of Spider-Man's
yeah,
all-time best known.
yeah, yeah. I mean, one thing I was thinking about just as you were saying that is how interestingly constructed the villains are that they decided to choose for this film, right? You have Doc Ock, who at the end of the Raimi verse movies essentially had a redemption arc and sacrificed himself. You have Max Dillon, Jamie Foxx's Electro, who was kind of this nerd and was bullied and not really the classic um, stereotypical alpha male villain, but someone who was left out and shunned by society and turned villainous kind of by accident. You have Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman, who
He was
was
misunderstood in
a
Spider-Man 3.
misunderstood guy in Spider-Man 3. Even Lizard had such a personal and intimate connection to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man through his father that these aren't your typical villains who are going to come after you just to kill you. Like there's a personal connection there.
There's nuance.
There's nuance to these villains. Even Michael Keaton's Vulture, if he were to come back, also has that same kind of personal touch with Spider-Man. And seeing how that plays off of their motivations, I think would be really fascinating. Oh, and I mean, to a lesser extent, Green Goblin, but obviously with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, he was a father figure. Norman Osborn was a father figure to him. So there's all of this nuance to these characters that they're bringing in, and seeing how they separate that nuance from Tom Holland's Spider-Man and the other two, but also bring it together because they clearly are fighting at some point. It could be between the three Spider-Men and then all of the villains, or could just be Tom Holland. We don't know. But there's all these layers that connect the past movies and are it feels like they're being not tied up, but are at least coming to a close in this film.
Yeah, definitely bringing together loose ends, if there were any left, by Sam Raimi and Mark Webb in their two iterations of Peter Parker's life. The trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home is currently online. Second trailer dropped just a few hours ago. We're going to be back with more Unqualified Film Bros. I'm posting this Wednesday or Tuesday night. We'll be back Friday with a very special episode of Unqualified Film Bros. Declan and Ben will be back with us. Go watch the trailer. Go watch the Sam Raimi movies. Go watch the MCU. Go watch Mark Webb's movies. Spider-Man No Way Home in theaters December 17th in the US and December
Tickets on sale
15th.
on the 29th in the US.
It's on
November 29th.
It's in theaters December 15th in the UK, which I'm very jealous of. I might have to book a trip to London. Go hang out with Tom Holland.
There you go.
All right, that's our quick breakdown of the Spider-Man No Way Home second trailer. We want to know your thoughts about the trailer, about the upcoming movie, about the MCU, about movies. Hit us up in the comments, hit us up on social media. We'll see you Friday with the other guys.
Good night.